Hello everyone, today we're going to learn about how to do the Rook and King checkmate, and for this I'm going to recommend the box method again, like we did in the King and Queen checkmate. So this is just a matter of getting your pieces coordinated together to trap the king in an invisible box using the rook. So let's begin and I'll explain. So the first move white will play in this position is rook to d3. As you can see, I've painted on an invisible box, so the rook controls the third rank and the d file. The black king can never escape out of that little box. It can only move on the squares that are green. So here black plays king e4, the obvious move attacking the rook, so it has to move back. But we defend it with king e2 and the box is maintained. So now king e5. And here we really want to play rook to d4 to make the box even smaller. But we can't just yet, so we have to play a waiting move and push the black king back. Now here we can play a waiting move, just move the king up. And by moving the king up, what we do is make a waiting move, maintain the box, but also limit black's squares that they can go to. So the king has to move backwards. For instance, if king e6 here, rook d4 would make the box even smaller. And if king e5, we can play king to d3, another waiting move. And if they move to the side, we can play rook to e4 and make another small box. If after king e6 though, we can also play king to e4 again, which is just a quicker way of making the box smaller, because the white king just moves so it can push the black king backwards. Again, the black king can't escape this box, so if it moves like king f6, we can make the box smaller with rook to d5. And if the king moves back, we just play one more waiting move like king to d4, and the black king has to move again, and we can make the box even smaller, or push our white king even further forward. So after playing king e3 here, if black plays king f5, we can make the box smaller. We play rook to d4. Again, another move that we can play is also rook to d5 check, which will make the box smaller quicker, because if now the king moves backwards to any of these squares, we can just move our king up to protect our rook, and the box is smaller. If king g4, which is black has technically escaped, but he's still in a box, he's still in this box with the rook, you can just play rook to e5, and now the black king is forced to go backwards into an even smaller space. If for instance here king to g3, white could play rook to g5 because the white king cuts off black's options, and the black king is forced to move backwards, and we've made an even smaller box really quickly. So after a move like rook e5 here, black could play king h4 straight away, and this just leads to a quick mate, because now white still maintains this box, but now we can move the king inside it, and it cuts off black's options again. Black has one move here, and then rook h5 is checkmate. But I don't want to make this too complicated, so let's go back to this method. Rook to d4 and king e5. White now plays a waiting move, just king to d3 to maintain this box. And if king f5, now we can play rook to e4, make the box smaller. So the black king is in a smaller space. If king f6, we can't play rook to e5 yet, because the black king can take it, so we'll support it with king to d4. And if king f5 again, we don't want to play rook e5 now, check, because the king can escape the box. So instead we play another waiting move, king to d5, and the king is forced to move backwards. Here we'd like to play rook f4 because that will make the box smaller, but we can't yet, so we need to support it with king e5. This also pushes the king backwards. If king g6, we can just make the box smaller with rook to f4. And after king g5, white may look a bit stuck here, but we just play a waiting move to maintain this box, king e4, and the king is forced to move away from the rook, so king g6. We make the box smaller again, rook f5, and now with king h6, we want to play rook to g5 to make the box smaller, but we can't, so we support it with the king for now. King g6, another waiting move for us, and the king is forced to go back, and now we've made the box smaller, rook g5. And now black only has 3 squares left, and this is where the important technique comes in. So king h7. Again, we could make the box smaller. Rook g6 would do that, but we can't yet. So we play king f5, king h6. We can't check yet because the king would escape the box. But we can play another waiting move, king f6. And when king h7 has been played, we play rook g6. And black only has 2 squares remaining to move to. So king h8. And now we've set up a mating trap. This idea just makes sure we get the king in the corner. So the king's in the corner, and now we just need to use a bit of technique. So king f7 and king h7. Again, the king's trapped in this box. We want to play rook h6, check, which leads to checkmate, but the king isn't in the corner yet. So we play a little waiting move with the rook now. We can play any move along the 6th rank, because the kings are opposite one another, so this king can't escape, and it can't ever escape this h6 square either. So we can move the rook all the way back to a6 if we wish. Now after king h8, we just play rook h6, checkmate, and the king can't escape because these squares are all covered by our other king. So that's the box method for the rook and king checkmate. There are many other subtleties that I've tried to include in this video, such as the opposition of the kings, which is very important in this endgame. But for beginners, I recommend using this box method just to get your opponent's king in the corner using your rook and king. Remember, always to play waiting moves if you can't make the box smaller. And in this type of position, I would always recommend to be very careful of stalemate. Never move your rook to make the box smaller with just 1 square left. I myself have stalemated a few games like this, especially when I was a junior player. So I recommend that you practice these positions. You can do this by yourself and just practice the key ideas. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.